My Neighbor Won't Stop Smiling at Me by Greek user 06. I live in a house in a small town in England with my parents and a younger sister. For as long as I can remember, we never had problems with our neighbors. It was quite the opposite. My neighbors were always friendly with us and we could consider them as our friends. They never got annoyed by me and my sister playing in their garden, and whether I would send my ball in their yard, they always forgive me. They are only little children, they don't do this on purpose, they will say. As a kid I really liked them, and since now my feelings for them haven't changed, I was happy to greet them in the morning before going to school and pay them a visit to speak with their children. It was a big surprise for me to see that someone had moved into the house opposite from mine. I was returning from school when I saw a man's figure outside from it. When he saw me, he focused his sight on me without making any gesture. I was looking at him curiously, and I was awkwardly raised my hand to greet him. A smile, a very wide smile, appeared on his face, and he disappeared inside the house. I was confounded, but I decided to not pay much attention. I will discuss this with my parents later. When my mother returned home, I told her about our new neighbor. From our conversation, I learned his last name, which was Marks, and that she had seen him as well in the morning, but when she tried to speak to him, he just ignored her. She had discussed this with the other neighbors, but they hadn't had the chance to speak with him yet. We came to the conclusion that he was still trying to get used to the new area and the people, so we had the idea to pay him a visit the following day in an attempt to make him feel welcome. The next evening, me and my mother were outside of his house, holding a homemade cake. We had rang the bell and we were waiting patiently for him to appear. 5 minutes had passed and there was still no answer or sign of him, which would show that he had heard the bell. Just when we were about to leave, the door opened and Mr. Marks made his appearance. He was quite tall and seemed to be around the age of 30, with dirty blonde hair and a pair of big black eyes. I do not know why, but as soon as he looked at me, I flinched and stepped back a little. "Hello, Mr. Marks. Sorry for bothering you, but we're your new neighbors and we just want to welcome you into our neighborhood," my mother said, giving him the cake. He took it without protest and just smiled at us. Before stepping inside his house, we were still standing in front of his door, trying to understand if he would return to thank us or not. Since he didn't return, we decided to head back home. "Well, better than nothing," my mother said while she was unlocking the door. "Isn't it kinda strange that he said nothing? Not even a single thank you?" I asked. "Maybe he was not a very talkative person, or he's still hesitant to open up with us. He just came here, Daniel. It's understandable." I said nothing and went to my room. I put on my headphones to listen to some songs and opened my window. My room is on the second floor of the house, and from my windows I can see the houses next to mine. As I was moving my head on the rhythm of the song, I absently looked at Mr. Mark's house. I can't understand if it was my fantasy or not, but I could swear that I saw him standing next to his window, glaring at me with a smile. A wide, scary smile. I felt like I had been splashed by cold water and I could barely move from my shock. I blinked my eyes a few times, and to my surprise, he disappeared. I continued glaring at the window, expecting him to appear again. However, nothing happened, and without knowing it, 1 hour had passed and it was time to go to bed. Questions had started roaming in my head and a bad feeling had aroused me. I could barely sleep this night, and all I could dream about was him staring at me and smile. I was very tired of school and I couldn't focus on the lessons. I had only one thing in my mind, and this was to find out what was wrong with our neighbor. The following weeks my other neighbors tried to come closer with Mr. Marks. It was not a big surprise for me when I learned that their attempts were unsuccessful, and as he did with me and my mother, he didn't share a word with them. I had become more suspicious about him, and I was not feeling comfortable being around him. His aura terrified me, and I couldn't forget his scary smile, which he gave me whenever I would see him when I went out. At nights I could see his figures next to the window, without moving or doing anything, just staring at me from his house with his usual smile. Despite the distance, I could see every characteristic on his face, as if he was in front of me. His eyes looked completely black, without eyeballs, and despite his human body, he seemed more inhuman. His smile was haunting me in my dreams and life. It didn't matter how many times I would come across him. Every time he would see me, he would just smile at me. What scared me more was that it seemed like nobody else had noticed this except me. It was like I was the only one who understood that something was wrong with Mr. Marks. Every time I would try to show him staring at me at night to my parents, they wouldn't believe me or couldn't recognize him. I couldn't find peace anywhere. I don't feel comfortable sitting alone in my room, and I wasn't able to do nothing without closed windows, which caused my family surprise. Even with the closed windows, his smile haunts me, and it's even worse than with open windows. I don't know what to do. Speak to my parents or friends about it? Investigate the situation? Call the police? None of these choices seems good. Nothing will help me and things will just get worse. I can do nothing, and the only option where she's left is to get used to this. Even right now I can feel him staring at me with his stupid smile, which has gotten wider than before. I am not afraid anymore. It still scares me sometimes, but not as it used to. In fact, I am more annoyed rather than terrified by it. I will give everything to whip it out of his fucking face and get rid of him once and for all. Maybe I have to pay him a visit to my neighbor, and this time I'll make sure that I will be the one who will have the last laugh. Or actually, smile. Wow, another great story. Thank you folks for tuning in, and sweet dreams.